have a letter to hand deliver to Mr. Rakes, and
where are we?
We are in front of the Gates Foundation. First time I've ever been here.
Okay. So what's the letter about? What's this letter for?
It's regarding Cynthia. Want to get it directly from the source?
What's this letter for?
This is a letter about the need for a community-driven, community-supported African-American cultural museum that would provide programs for the community, from education in terms of GED, satisfaction of GED requirements, job training, and basic community needs being met inside the community. And we would like the Gates Foundation to be a partner in such an opportunity.
Thank you.
Sure.
Welcoming.
Let them know we were coming.
We have to hop the fence.
Oh. Whoa. Whoa, okay, they don't want to.
Beat it, beat it, beat it. Go, 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 go. It's on fair.
Not me.
Oh, well, we're already here.
We just. Oh. Hey, but don't we want to go in together? All right. It was a little odd.
You got a shot of the gate closing on us, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, excellent. Here they go.
How are you? I'm CynthiaMcKinney. I am the Green Party candidate for president, and I would like to deliver a letter.
Yes, sir.
Do you mind turning the camera off, please, ma'am?
I'd rather not.
You would have to send it in an appeal box address, and I can give you that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
here's my card, so you'll know who came.
We're just not able to, we can't accept it here. So I'm so sorry.
You can't even take my card?
So let me give you our business card. Feel free to go ahead and send your information to us.
Oh, I see. And how do we ensure that Mr. Rakes gets it?
Well, it will be delivered to our PO box in the Royal Office. It gets directed to their individual groups. And then somebody will call you back.
May I have your card, please?
Well, that's actually our business card.
Is your name Brandy?
No, actually, not Brandy. She's not here right now. I'm
Oh.
Janice.
Oh,
So,
well, make sure that I note with whom I'm speaking. Brandy?
Janice.
Janice.
Huh?
She won't turn it off.
And what's your last name, Janice?
Passion, P-A-S-I-O-N.
That's wonderful. Do you have a lot of that?
Yeah.
P-A-S-I-O-N. Okay, and wouldn't you like for the record to know who it is that has come to visit you?
It's just part of our protocol. We can't accept anything with the front desk, no packages, business cards. It's part of security.
Where do you send your messengers?
Messengers?
Messengers, you know, BikeNet, DHL, FedEx, UPS, Fleetwood.
Yeah, everything is coordinated through our facilities. Anything that comes through the foundation, we are expecting those packages.
So if I was coming over here from Fleetwood Messenger Service with a document from ABC Legal, where would it go?
first with them as far as anything that's going into the foundation. They would be expecting that.
Oh, so they'd be waiting on it.
It's just, yeah, we just get a lot of information and a lot of packages that comes in. It takes a while for them to sort through everything that we get in.
I see. Okay. So you walk the process errors and stuff. That's clever. Okay, thank you.
Well, is there going to be an incident report made about our visit so that at least someone would know that we came?
I can't,
Oh, okay. So we just broke up.
Well, they do have security cameras. We could wave to them. They can get notifications.
I see.
Excuse me, sir. Is there somebody you'd like to talk to?
Yeah,
Is there a leader of your group, or?
well, I think we're all leaders, but if you would like to let me know who you are, I certainly am ready to let you know who I am.
Do you guys have an appointment?
No, we are here and we'd like to deliver that to Mr. Rakes. It's just a letter of request for support for our community project.
That's okay. So, we
Ma'am,
don't
can I ask you to
send-
please turn off your camera and stop filming?
send through the mail, so.
Ma'am,
if I could give
can I
you
ask you to turn off your camera?
email
Please stop filming.
I
I
don't
have,
know.
yeah, and what would that mailing address be?
I believe it's on the card. Is there a field?
It would be the P.O. Box. Yes. And what's your name?
My name's Graham.
Graham. And what's your last name, Graham?
Jones. You can send-
And you're the, what's your position?
I'm with the security staff.
Well, I don't want to send it to you. This is a letter for support.
Okay, I understand. I can forward it on to one of our folks, but we do have like a pretty defined process for any kind of requests or inquiries.
So if I send it to you and you're on the security staff, then you will make sure that it gets to the addressee? Is that a promise? Thank you.
If you guys have an appointment, I'm not gonna see you.
Okay, well, we
That's
don't want
nice.
to overstay our welcome.
Hi.
I'll let you know who I am.
Okay.
Great, look out for my letter, okay? Okay, it'll be addressed to you, Graham.
First of all.
Okay, great.
Here you go.
Thank you.
So Graham, just as a note, so you know for your report though, it was in regards to the African American Heritage Museum and Culture Center that the group showed up to deliver the letter
Okay.
to Mr. Ray.
Absolutely. And just so you know, we have a pretty defined process for visitors. So generally, we don't allow people that don't have a sponsor on site. So
We would
Should
ask.
be a
We would
year.
ask that you would go through our standard grants application process, and then we could arrange for a meeting if it's desired. by the
So now what's your name?
foundation. My name's Dave Furnace. I'm with the grant.
Dave Furnace, like this.
It's the heating appliance in your house.
Okay, great.
I bet you say that a lot, huh?
Yeah, I know the foundation.
This is just a little bit of an overly aggressive appeal for us. So we tend
Yeah.
we got to look out for obviously the interest and the safety of the
Right.
people here in the building.
But I'm going to send to Graham.
That's fine. That's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. We'll make sure it'll go into our grants inquiry process to make sure that the right people get it, and we'll make sure it gets processed through as it should.
And that's a commitment from you too?
Absolutely.
Great,
Absolutely.
thank
Okay.
you very much.
there's an email address on there. It's info. That's the best way to get in touch with our grant staff. So that's the most expedient way. It's right in the process.
Yeah, it wasn't just, I don't know if it was just grant staff, but also Mr. Rex, Mr. Golson, in regards to their involvement in projects in the African American community here in Seattle.
Can I ask what the purpose of the filming is, though?
You have to ask the people who are filming.
May I ask what the
Yes, you
purpose
may.
is of the filming
Yes, you may.
is?
We're documenting the encounter with you.
For what purpose?
Well, I mean, this is CynthiaMcKinney. She's a 12-year congresswoman from Georgia, and she's somebody who
She's
needs
a
the camera.
presidential
Why don't we step out of
candidate.
the way so we can let some folks come in
She's
here?
running for president of the United States right now. This is, yeah, from the Green Party.
Very exciting.
And it's a shame, it's a travesty that you don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, it
That's-
really is.
Okay.
So you're in the presence of a very special person.
Well,
And-
we
and we
appreciate
prob-
you coming by. We just ask that we make sure that in the future that we go through the proper channels so that we can, if there's something that the foundations can do to help you, that we
Yes.
do that in the proper way.
Yes.
Okay.
We very much want the foundation's help.
Okay. Thank you. If you wanted to go out either way, there's a gate on each side. You just have to press the green button to open the gate door there. Thank you.
sound like we were 100 of us.
Okay, they're shitting
They're saying,
their
they're saying funny things.
in which you guys came.
What's kind of a mixer there, I guess. You plug mic into. Plug the lapel mic in, so you get better audio from there.
Let me talk to you in a second, okay? That's good. No, that's good.
Good. How's it going?
It's going well.
Good. I've heard about it. What's that place? This is Democrats.
Yes, I know.
Solid. I know. That's good. You got a lot of money.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the guy that's one of my favorites. Thank you. This is they knocked out all the minor parties out there. They knocked out all the minor parties. You know, that's strange. You have to have a certain percentage. But they just decided not.
I need to move a chair.
Oh, hey, Twan.
From you guys' definition, you must be somewhere in West Africa.
I know, I'm like, Sierra Leone, I'm not.
I gotta go make you do some beats. I'll see you guys later.
What they talk about disturbance now, they're afraid to get to east of mountains. That's where it was. But the word was many of them come here.
So a lot of them kept that culture. Did you say the majority of them that went to the south?
Not only from east,
Kenya? Most of the slaves that went to the south were from Kenya. So how can it be true that most of the slaves that were taken...
Do the same for me. You must be
Most of the
that
slaves that were in
tourist spirit. You know what I'm saying?
The majority of the slaves of the African
So yeah, but you did argue 2 minutes ago that it was West African, but now you're saying the majority of the slaves in the south.
The majority of the African...
But that's why I'm saying, like, it's all about your word usage.
The majority of the Africans brought to the U.S. were actually from the Congolese. A good portion were from that area. And then Senegal too. But also, you can see the west coast of Africa. You can see that though. You can see that within the Caribbean stuff, like right into the Americas. Like you see in Cuba, the Yoruba people, the Congo people. You see in Brazil, you see the people from Angola, and you see that the people from the Yoruba tribe also get their tradition. You see that with the Caribbean, the religion.
I saw you right there for the sideshow, but it was common. I went just to the sideshow.
What's that? What about the social?
The sideshow in Oh yeah, that's why I don't, it's just a waste of time.
Wait till you see the video we got.
No. Is it interesting?
Yeah, I want to show that to you. See what you think.
Did you make a two majority? Better know.
African American, who actually went and studied. And then we also, proven though, that the tradition that African Americans are actually similar to the tradition that they have in the Congo.
Yes, but what I wanted to say was a lot of the traditions from West Africa are also traditions you can find in East Africa. If we can say that, of course then a lot of the traditions that we find in African American culture can be related to all of Africa, or can be related to specific parts of Africa. But it would be even they have cultural similarities. So you're pinpointing those like musical points as certain parts of that, which is cool because I know some of them that's nothing I can not because we are one of the staff. But when we talk about these people and the adoption of music here, we must also know that they too were inter-adopting within the African culture.
But is
The whole of
there one
Africa.
point, I'd like to, actually there's 2 points that I'd like to bring up. One point is this, he also linked that the certain words, he also linked certain words, right? With the certain words that African Americans use. So we're not going to talk about that, okay? You know, that's the side of the West African side, okay? But we'll talk about North Africa. North America, I'm sorry. He linked certain words that we use, like jazz or whatever like that, to certain congregations. Now, what I'm saying is that,
Like what kind? Like
he links the jazz he linked it, right? And so then also what he did link it to was this. And that's the point that you guys realize too, is just that if you
where? Eastern?
Well,
Which is what and what?
here, I said, okay, so, no more. It was over, Mark. North America, which have been able to keep their traditions. There's a lot of influence from the which is the Yoruba here. There's a lot of influence from the Babu, from they kept a lot of those traditions. Now, what I'm saying is that those people came from West Africa. Because of the fact that those certain spiritual
All right, so we gotta get started.
When they're out here in Canada, so of course they're all from the same place.
No, but what I'm saying. I'm sorry, Mr. McKinney.
That's all right.
Okay, so our basic theme is politics and us, and how we can use our power, just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 20 people in here. How do we leverage the power that we have? We all do have power to make the systems, the politics work for us. We have good case studies. For example, the museum is a tangible project. You know, the multi-piece center that we're developing, even this building here, SBI. How do we develop our power to go and get the resources that we need in our community? You know, and keep things serving us. Because a lot of the things that were acquired for us in the 60s and the 70s are now being turned away from us, and everybody, a lot of other groups are benefiting, and we're not. So she is in a unique position because she was a congresswoman for 12 years. She was in Washington, D.C., and was able to see what works. She knows what worked on her, what made her call people back, or made her want to meet with somebody and not meet with someone else, as well as her colleagues, what buttons must be pushed. Because we know we all had the right idea, but again, we have to be wise so that we're more efficient. Work smarter, not harder. And that's the theme of our training. This is a training. So people should really be taking notes, you know. And this is developing really your capacity as a citizen to wield your power. And not just be subjected to other people's power that know how to wield and leverage their power, whether it's money or whatever it might be. So, would you like to start by just giving your definition of politics?
Okay, the standard definition of politics that you'll learn in any social studies class or political science class is politics is the authoritative allocation of values in a society. And the authoritative means that there's some kind of governing structure. Allocation, that's who gets what. And how much. Values. Priorities. Now, if you have, take the 4 pillars of the Green Party, but just because, not because I'm advocating the Green Party, but just because it's handy. Okay, those are the 4 pillars of the Green Party. And so basically what the Green Party would like to see is these are the values: peace, social justice, ecological wisdom, grassroots democracy, translated into public policy. They would like to see these values also assumed by the representatives that represent all of us in government. They would like those representatives to make sure that when they dispense the budget and make policy, that this is a part of the allocation, and they want to make sure that these are the priorities. Now, if we look at the Dems and the Repubs, what are their values? If you look at the public policy that they
When you say
enact,
public policy, what do you mean by that?
the laws, the legislation that, the budget. The most important piece of legislation that anyone in the legislative branch votes on and passes is the budget. Because the budget basically is this. It's the allocation of the values. The budget for the school board votes on the budget. And so if it's a school board, that's the authoritative part. The allocation is the various programs and priorities that are set by the school board, and then the values is what those priorities are. So if there's a premium, for example, on after-school programs, you find out that children need to have supervision after school, then you will make sure that after-school programs are funded. And because your value is to make sure that children are safe instead of going home to empty homes. So
You're saying if there's not a budget allocation to it, the people who are in government don't value that?
bottom line, yes, because the most important piece of legislation that those who are in office vote on is the budget. So if the school board, for example, doesn't provide for a program, then it's not their value. If you say that that program is valuable to you and the community needs it, and they won't give it to you, they don't share your values. For example, with the Dems and the Republicans, with respect to peace. Are the Democrats, is Barack Obama going to give us peace?
No.
No, because he's already said he's going to maintain a residual force in Iraq. He's going to put the majority of the forces in what they call an over-the-horizon deployment, which means that they'll be over in Kuwait probably. And then he's going to do a surge into Afghanistan with an additional 10,000 troops in Afghanistan. So that certainly isn't peace. That's more war and more occupation. So the Dems X out on that, and we already know they X out on that. Okay, what about social justice? One example could be imprisonment rates or maybe racial profiling. That's something that young people are targeted on, driving while black, driving while brown. Who has taken a vocal stand against, say for example, racial profiling that has resulted in the elimination of racial profiling? Nobody. They don't care about it.
Yeah, the Democrats raised the issue, though, right?
They raise the issue so you can get their vote, but then politics is the allocation.
Right.
So now, if it's not being implemented, then it's just talk, it's hot air. It's just talk, and the corporate press leads you to believe that the hot air is the substance of a campaign. So, popularity, horse race. These are all the things that you'll see on television, but you won't see this. Because that's what really counts.
Is that the same as bills being in a committee and being held there? Kind of like John Conyers' bill, reparations or extending?
Right. For example, you've got H.R. 40, which has been introduced since 1989. That's the reparations bill. Now, if you're introducing a bill since 1989 and it doesn't get a hearing, then obviously it's not on the agenda of anyone except the person who introduces it. How do you put a piece of legislation, how do you put a value on the agenda so that it can be allocated by your representative? And that's this. Organization. Organization and mobilization, and in some cases, embarrassment. And taking those who are not responsive out of office, which is the ultimate form of accountability.
So do people need to sign on to the bill in order for it to get a vote, or how does that work for it to actually get to the floor and be voted on? And does it take like 5 people? Does it take 200 people?
It takes the will of the Speaker of the House, because the Speaker of the House schedules legislation to come up on the floor. Now there's a committee process which is called regular order. Every level of government has a regular order in which motions are entertained. That's Robert's Rules of Order, and legislation is considered. But you don't have to have regular order in order to have a piece of legislation considered. And so it doesn't have to go through the committee process. The Speaker can say, okay, we want to put H.R. 40 on the floor today for a vote.
So would that be saying that the Speaker should be someone to be lobbied?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've seen so many bills that have evaded regular order. They come to the floor without going through the committee process because it was a powerful lobby group that wanted the legislation passed. Once it gets on the floor, if it's not controversial, that is, if people don't talk about it, because most people don't read the legislation, so if they don't talk about it, then they'll assume, particularly if it's on the suspension calendar, and legislative bodies, all legislative bodies have suspension calendars for the consideration of non-controversial items, then it will pass. Once it passes, then it goes over to the other body. And then the other body votes on it, passes it. If they pass it, then it goes to the governor, or it goes to the mayor, or it goes to the president for signature.
So as a congresswoman, what was the best way to get your attention or get you to?
Right here. What does that mean? Well, I'm gonna take this away. In our system, what's the most effective way of getting an elected official's attention?
Greases wall.
That's right. Because that's another issue, and you're absolutely right. It's money. It's money. That's the way our system operates. It's money.
So a group, could a group this size have gotten your attention? Mostly students, working class people. How?
Well, you see, what distinguishes me and people like us from the norm? So, for a corporate CEO to get in to talk to me, they had to jump through a lot of hoops. That's not normally the case. 15 minutes with a member of Congress goes for like $25,000. So lobbying is big business. And a member of Congress is very important. Any elected official is very important, whether it's a school board member, or is the judge, or is the state legislator, or the federal level. All of them, if they appear on your ballot, they're important. And so that's also why it's important to vote the entire ballot when you do.
I seen something, I think, like on the Colbert show or something, where lobbyists pay people to stand in line for them to be able to get in and talk to people.
Right.
Can citizens do the same thing, wait in line to get in and just, do that?
But wait a minute. The representative is put in this authoritative place by you, right? So you shouldn't have to pay to see your representative.
Isn't that unethical in terms of the law? I know it's being done just like in the music business. They do payola and they say it's illegal, but they do it. Is there something on the books that say that's unethical to pay to be able to push the law through?
That's what lobbying is called.
So they just. And the one more thing I wanted to say to you is why is it that you feel in today's time that a woman of color is bold enough to expose the truth? Why do you think there's not as many black males or any other races that's kind of within the system that's really got the balls to go ahead and expose what's going on?
We've got the wrong people in office. That's just very clear.
How about a situation where if you're dealing with the black community, in Seattle we're about 8% of the population. Statewide we're like 3% of the population. So what strategy do we, our issues of incarceration, et cetera, may not be important to the other 75 or 92% of the population. So how do we leverage the power? What's the most efficient way to leverage our power?
Well, first of all, you got to get the attention of the people who are running for office. There's dollars and there's votes. Voting block. And if a candidate can't get elected, well, first of all, candidates can't get elected at all if they don't have this and this. But on election day, you can have $1 million in the bank. If you come up short on the votes, then you lose. So the most important of these two, even though these are very important, but on election day, votes is more important. So if you have a voting block, then that's something that you can use to your advantage.
What's a voting block?
When, back in what, I guess it was like the 1950s, in the city of Atlanta, we had a man who was running for mayor, Hartsfield. And black people were talking about they wanted to vote and they wanted to do this and they wanted to do that. And Hartsfield came back and said, register X number of people and I'll talk to you. And so they got busy and they registered people to vote. And they went back and they talked to him. And the reason that Atlanta is like the capital of the South, as opposed to Alabama, Birmingham at the time was going through all of the police and the riots and the water hoses and all of that. You won't see that for Atlanta, because Atlanta was a negotiated freedom, if you can negotiate your freedom. That's why it's incomplete, because it wasn't. It was negotiated. But we didn't go through all that civil strife, and so Atlanta was able to rise while Birmingham got mired. But there was a time when Alabama and Atlanta, when Birmingham and Atlanta were equal. And the mayor just said, give me votes. And that's what happened. So the blocks are registered voters who will vote based on ideology or some community cause. Something that unites the community. So it could be, like for example, the Republicans are very good on this social justice thing. They're very good at hitting hot button emotional issues for white people. And so they will show like a Willie Horton ad. Y'all familiar with the Willie Horton ad? Okay, Willie Horton was this, actually it was Al Gore who used it first. But he was a black man who had been convicted of a crime. He gets out of prison, commits another crime, and so then, you know, that becomes a central issue in the campaign. And
the issue was cops, more cops, and more jails.
Yeah, and so.
Tough on crime.
Huh? Yes.
Tough on crime.
Yes.
Get tough on crime.
In the evangel community too, with the abortion issues, Republicans and racists.
Abortion is one of those hot button emotional issues where people just lose their ability to think because they are reacting from their gut. And then they'll go into the polls and they'll cast a vote that actually is against their interests, their financial interests, but it conforms with their values. They vote their values. And so getting tough on crime or right to life, anti-abortion. Gay marriage. It is, yeah. I mean, that's one that's pretty popular today. And, you know, they'll put it on the ballot and they can count on certain very religious types or, you know, some hate-filled people like with immigration. That's a hate-filled issue. And they can count on them coming to the polls. They got to do whatever they can to bring people out to the polls. And when they do, and they vote for a particular issue, and they all vote based on that single issue, that's a block. In the South, voting blocks are racial as well. So you'll have a black candidate This is what the Voting Rights Act is all about. So you'll have a black candidate, but the black candidate can be better than the white candidate, but the white voters will not vote for a black candidate. And so that's called racially polarized block voting, which is all the language of the Voting Rights Act, and why you have districts that at one point they needed to be 65% black to counter one, that blacks didn't participate, and two, that the voting was racially polarized.
You mentioned earlier that it's good to vote all the way down the line. I remember hearing a while back that it's one thing to not vote if you don't see your value represented on the ballot, but it's good to at least put your name down and show that you do go vote, even if you don't vote for anyone specifically, so they know that your demographic votes. How do you feel about that? That's still a good thing to do, not to pick any particular issue to vote for if you don't feel it, but still put your name on the ballot so you know that you do vote.
Well, you know, I'm in people of participating, and however they feel they must participate so that their vote reflects their values. I'd be supportive of that. I just want to make sure that people participate, because the system works best when you guys don't participate. Because if you participate and you don't believe this is what the corporate press will give you: popularity, horse race. They'll give you anything except values. And if you participate based on your values, then the powers that be lose. They lose every time. So that's why they work so hard to control your mind in hip-hop, in the music, in the videos, in the education system. Everything is to control the way you think. It's just like point number 5 on the COINTELPRO papers. We must produce a strategy to prevent young blacks from adhering to a black nationalist ideology. The FBI wrote it, and the rest of the government is doing it against you.
And here we are. I got a question.
That's right.
All right, so if we're represented by a representative that goes to bat for us, and they don't agree with our issue that we bring to them, say for instance reparations, and a Republican or something is our representative that won the vote, do they still have to bring our issue to the table if we bring that issue to them?
They should.
Okay. And then another question is, can you explain to me what a superdelegate and how much power a superdelegate has? Because I heard a lot about superdelegates and I really didn't know what power they had.
The Democratic Party, now mind you, I've been fought by the Democratic Party, so I'm not the expert on the Democratic Party, but the Democratic Party has the equivalent of the Electoral College. And so for the purposes of nominating their presidential and vice presidential candidates, they have a group of elected officials. You're a superdelegate if you're an elected official. And those elected officials can override popular, the popular choice. And that's what the whole discussion was with respect to Hillary and Obama about the role of the superdelegates. The people could have voted all day for Barack, but the superdelegates could have chosen Hillary instead.
And they would have won, and they could have predicted, so Hillary could have won over the popular?
Yeah, because the superdelegates hold the balance of power, and they could have, because Hillary also got votes. And so part of the public pressure was to force the superdelegates, and Hillary actually had more superdelegates pledged to her. And that was the public pressure was to force the superdelegates to support the popular choice.
So that was going back to the grassroots democracy part.
Yep. Okay, for example, you asked how it's also like email, the traditional ways, email, faxes.
More pressure.
Yeah. Personal visits.
I feel like we did this afternoon.
Could you speak on that and how you put efforts about this afternoon?
Well, Now, that was a private entity, so it's different. We went to the, actually it was White King's idea, he was just trying to get me arrested. What did you tell? It would have been my first time being arrested. I would have been a hero to myself.
CNN.
Oh, we went to the Gates Foundation because the Gates Foundation is part of the financing of turning Coleman School, instead of it being a real center of our community, having those 36 apartments and all that. So while Bill Gates is out in the world talking about saving Africans and all of this, the Africans right here, when we came up with a project to save ourselves, they financed something that doesn't help our community. You know, so we gotta, I don't know how you're gonna eliminate poverty in Africa, but we got poverty 15 minutes from, you know what I'm saying? You know, we should be the best black Africans on the planet, right? You know what I'm saying? Before you go trying to raise up some other groups. And not only is he not raising us up, but financing, you know, things that actually keep us down. There gotta be some accountability for that. So, you know, we went down there to personally deliver a letter from a presidential candidate in support of the, returning, you know, for them to be true to their values that they are, espousing to the people. You know, for him to be true to his word. If this is what he's about, we'll be true to it. And this allocation that you made, bringing it back to this, the allocation of, I think, about $1 million to the Urban League was contrary to the values that they say. And it's contrary to the interests of our community. So we just had to make sure that he knew that it wasn't just us. It was national people, you know, that feel the same way.
Now, each of you has power. And whether you use it or not is up to you. You can use it or you can lose it. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So, the point of admiration that I have for White King is that he actually uses it. He uses his power, and if he can use his power and also leverage your power into that voting block that somebody on city council or the school board or the state house or state senate will listen to, then you have the opportunity to get your values allocated. Or maybe you decide to run for office. And because I know...
Let's use Mara for example. We want to nominate Mara. She's an entrepreneur, a mother, works in the community. She's like our own Patty Murray.
Okay.
You know? Patty Murray.
Senator in tennis shoes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
how will we...
We got one president sitting among us.
Another, yeah. We got another orator right here. We got some candidates in here.
Okay. Well, that's what we need is candidates. Because what we, and Brother Omari can testify to this too, and that is that first wave of activists that went into office after the Voting Rights Act was passed. Some of them are still there. Some of them have
Lewis and Jordan.
Some of them have moved on. But we basically have created a black political elite that is cut off from the values of the people who vote for them. But the people vote for them all the time and never hold them accountable.
So they sold us out.
That's exactly right.
They fought for us, and then when they got in, they became one of them.
That's exactly right. But that's because they didn't have the right ideological grounding. And then it's also because the community never held them accountable. And so we have allowed them to become basically the problem.
You said they didn't have the right ideological grounding, so what do you mean by that? Can you clarify for me?
I don't exactly know how to put, I mean, you know, that...
Turn the cheek
Well,
when they
what's
see things
ideology?
that can help the people. Now they're accepting the payoff.
I've been offered lots of things that would make my life easy if I go along with what these lobbyists want. But sometimes that meant lying, and I never did.
So you're saying that they compromise their values?
They compromise their values. Thank you very much. Yes.
So what is the charge? So the generation, my generation and younger, because of that, have become more detached from
Yes,
the
I think
political
so.
process.
Because the political process, honestly, you know, this is unpleasant for me to say, but it's my observation. I watched as we worked really hard in Atlanta to get our first black mayor. That was Maynard Jackson. And people who lived in the projects went out to the polls and voted, and they thought that their votes were going to change their material circumstances. Because politics has the power to change your material circumstances. You can go from powerless to powerful after one election. I've seen it happen because my dad is a kind of little rabble-rouser, and he noticed a demographic trend that blacks were moving into one of our suburban counties. So he goes to the black godfather in that county and says, we need to run a slate of candidates. And in one election, 50 blacks were elected. And the county government was completely taken over by black people. Wow. Completely. And the whites, this is a kind of a rural area that became suburban. And the whites were completely caught off guard. Now they have fought back by utilizing the power of, like they've brought in the state to control the school board, because the school board went all black. Several mayors, they have, you know, brought them under investigation. You know, they've done what they've used what they had available to them to react to this. But this was a coup that took place, and it's possible. These kinds of things are possible, but the science of politics then is making sure that you put together the right ingredients so that you can actually get people elected to office. That part is the nuts and bolts of politics, which I find very fun. I like it a lot, yeah.
I had another.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So Maynard, he asked me, I'm sorry, he asked me to finish telling the story about Maynard Jackson. So Maynard Jackson, so unfortunately, Maynard was a wonderful mayor and ended up making great changes in the city of Atlanta. He infuriated the white power structure, so they basically were glad when his 8 years was up. But of the blacks that he had helped to create as millionaires, nobody, because the whites were upset with him, the blacks wouldn't give him employment, you know. He had to leave Atlanta in order to feed his family.
Wow. They sold him out.
So then he comes back, and he's able to gain election, but he learned some bad things in the town that he was at. And he went up to Chicago, so you can imagine what kind of things he learned. And then when he came back, the city of Atlanta was saddled with the kind of corruption that eventually ended with him negotiating to not run for office again. Investigations of the issuing of contracts for the airport. We had, 8 years of Andy Young, and Andy was basically absentee, and so there were a lot of people who were doing things under Andy's administration. Then after that, we had 8 years of Bill Campbell. These are all black mayors. And Campbell ended up going to jail, to prison.
Just got out of jail yesterday.
Okay, just got out yesterday.
Just got out of the halfway house yesterday, Salvation Army halfway house, from on the radio this morning.
Well, what was he in jail?
What was his charge?
I would say he went to jail for daring to think that he was actually the mayor.
Ooh, that's cold. That's cold.
And you'll see that the color of corruption is always black. And but the people who started the movement in the city of Atlanta, that were the difference between Maynard Jackson in 1973 winning instead of losing, still, after 30 some odd years of black rule in Atlanta, had not. So I think what we have to also understand is that a black face doesn't necessarily mean this. Say that, right? Doesn't mean that. Yes.
In the economic times we're moving into, we're basically taking a nosedive further and further into a depression. See, we're in a situation where there's more and more discontent against the one-party system with its two masks, and it's manifesting on both sides of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. What strategy do you advise for our side, for the internationalist, multi-ethnic, human rights side to use in dealing with the extreme nationalist, white nationalist side that's all mobilizing against the same economic problem at the other side of the spectrum, and that is using maneuvers on us. For instance, you may disagree with me. I feel that the Ron Paul white nationalist people pulled a successful maneuver on us when they got the Power to the People campaign to attend a press conference, which they billed supposedly as let us all into the debates, but then everybody.
No, it wasn't that. It was never that.
Okay.
And that was disinformation that came from that came from a different camp other than ours. And as someone who is, I'm not a politician, but that some would.
Ideology, and I think one of the things that has happened to the progressive movement is that it lacks the strong ideology, because there started out being an education component, so that when people came into the political process, they were very clear about history. They were very clear about who was the friend and who was the enemy.
Right.
And so there was some study that took place. And so that when they came into the political process, they were clear. And so the people, the first group of elected officials were people whose ideology was strong. I think, in my opinion, after that, a lot of the people that got the jobs in government and other places were people who ended up being representatives of the people who put them there, as opposed to being people of the people who came up. If I'm making any sense, is that making sense? And I think that is certainly an issue today. And the second thing I want to say is that one of the issues, I think, in Seattle, and I'm still learning, but I think it has to do with, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for there to be a black bloc that the block is gonna have to be something else. It's gonna
Yes.
have to be maybe the youth block
Yes.
or the progressive block.
Yeah.
But what I need to say is that I think it's a very good time because everybody wants to be you. Everybody wants to be you. And there's some power in that. If you can use that to your advantage, you can lead something by being your very best self, as opposed to this caricature of yourself that's being promoted by your enemy.
That's right. That's part of that nuts and bolts thing that actually gets you here. That's a lot of fun, because once you start analyzing, first of all, we have to deal with the census. Then after the census, you'll have reapportionment. After reapportionment, you'll have redistricting. After redistricting, you get districts that people can actually run in and win. So this is a continuum of a process, and we're about to enter upon that stage right now as we prepare for the 2010 census. The Census Bureau is hiring. It would be wonderful for you guys to get jobs at the Census Bureau, actually taking the information down so that you can make sure that people who look like you, who travel in your circle, who think like you, participate in the census, because that's one way of having your voices heard also is by being counted. Then that block that you're talking about can become very powerful, because for me, I'm over here and I'm looking for votes. I'm a candidate and I'm looking for votes. I've done a poll and I know what my issues are that I gotta trumpet. Now the question is, who's gonna vote for me based on the issues that I like? That's your block. This is the beginning of your block. You'll find that young voters, 18 to 25, that's one group. They generally don't vote, so you ignore them. The voters who do vote, 55 to 60 and older. They vote, and that's why the dialogue is reduced to this, because those people already got their issue, they got their values taken care of already by the Dems and the Republicans in their own way. Because they vote. You guys don't vote, so you don't count. Nobody pays attention to you.
Is that why you have senior housing but no youth housing?
That's exactly right. That's right.
Other than
Good
the
point.
jail for the youth.
That's right. Get to jail for you guys.
So they're talking about building a new jail right now. There's a budget hearing going on.
Yeah, I got
City council.
question. Cynthia, when it comes to reparations, I was watching the CEO of Bank of America talk last week on PBS, and they were talking about taking the bail out of America and how they bank every other American family right now in America. Bank of America banks every other American, or doing some type of checking account or something with every other family. But I seen that they went and bought out Merrill Lynch, and I was watching this documentary not too long ago, 500 years later, and it gives you all the companies.
And we've got the corporate press that mislead us into thinking that this is important rather than this. We find out that when the time comes for us to move our pond, it won't move. How come our pond won't move? Because it's sold out. Our values would say that this pond needs to move, and the pond won't move. And that's basically what our situation is. We got a whole bunch of people who are in office. They got our same color, but they won't move for us.
So what do we do with them?
You get rid of them. You take them.
How you take them?
That's nuts and bolts politics. Politics 101.
What about the people?
Campaign management science.
So
Dr. Raymond Wimbush came a couple weeks ago to the race conference and spoke about reparations, and his book is actually really good, and it talks about different reparations, including corporation reparations, which I've been trying to get people to move back to Louisiana so their children can get their first 2 years of college paid. But on the larger scale, he was talking about the UN negotiating, people from Africa coming to the UN and negotiating the reparations that the U.S. pulled out a couple of years ago, if that was to remain on the table. How do we bring attention to situations like that so it can be more than just a bigwig issue?
It always comes down to this.
Because from my understanding, they're again talking about it either this week or next week. And I haven't read anything about it, I haven't seen anything about it.
I studied international relations. So in international relations theory, but also in, if I think about it, in econ, it's the same thing. And this wouldn't necessarily be UN, it would be supranational. But politics operates on all of these levels. And no matter what the level is, it's the same thing. So you want to go to the United Nations, which I believe in utilizing the UN. But there you still have the same, in fact it's even worse, it's more skewed against you except for actions in the General Assembly than it is right here. If we do this, ignore this, and become a part of that, for me.
But now, coming back to, well, I wanted to say what you said about the people that look like us that won't move for us. So, they've been saying a lot about post-racial society, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think about that?
Well, it's post-racial if you allow it to be post-racial.
What does that mean?
That race is no longer a factor in American U.S. politics. That's what Dick Morris proclaimed and Bill Bennett said.
Bill Bennett, the one that said abort the black babies, right?
Yes, that's who said abort black babies. If you want to lower the crime rate, right.
But I think that's because people don't understand the difference between position and programs. It's a post-racial society when you talk about black people being in position, i.e. Obama being president. But when you look at the program, black folks still going to be poor, homeless, in prison, because his position can't build the program. We have to build the program from the grassroots level and then make the politicians fund positive programs that solve problems. The trick right now, hire more police, hire more police. Police don't solve crime. They catch a criminal after the crime is committed. We want to set up programs where the criminal mind is not even formed. And you only can do that by having young people do constructive, positive things, because when they're happy doing constructive, positive things, what do? They keep doing constructive because that's their enjoyment, making their music, you know, playing sports or whatever, building houses. But if there's no program for them to express themselves and develop that, what do? They start standing on the corner, and if you stand on the corner, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get hooked up in crime. So, Cynthia, could you deal with the difference between position and programs or institutions?
Well, the position is here, and the program is here. Is that,
Well, couldn't we say that most black people, I mean, I would say that a lot of us have been miseducated. I read The Miseducation of the Negro. So I think every black person, when you read that, will understand that we have been poisoned. And to understand that is to say that, okay, well, our elected officials or the people that we look up to have been educated by the man and by that system. So until we educate ourselves from youth, from a young age, until we own our own schools, teach our own kids, do our own thing, then no matter what, for us to depend on someone that has been educated or working within the system or working for the man, we're going to always be teeter-tottering on our values or our beliefs or anything, because we have to be re-educated. So I would say that in education alone, from a youth age, we're depending on people that are working for the status quo. You see what I'm saying? Against us. So until we do our own thing, no matter what, we're always doing for them. We're always putting ourselves out there for them, to do for them. It's not for us because it wasn't made for us. It wasn't not supposed to be for us, you know? So until we are re-educated, I mean, and that comes from a kid's age. I mean, I told my daughter to make sure you pay attention in school, but it's like for her to go to a public school system, and me to tell her to do that is almost telling her, okay, well, you just inherit the same BS that we inherited. Instead of saying, okay, well, how can I get her into a charter school or a school where she understands more about who she is in order to make a change? I mean, we're only doing what we're taught. So until we teach ourselves, then when are we going to really come out of it?
You're absolutely right. I mean, you know, I didn't get my black education from any of my academic institutions, including my elementary school, which I was accused of trying to overthrow the faculty.
That girl.
I got that on my own when I was in college at USC, and they paid $25,000 for well, that's 20 years ago, 30 years ago. No, 40 years, 30 years ago. They gave Shockley $25,000 to come and tell me that I was inferior. And that was pretty hurtful.
Yeah.
But if you look at United for a Fair Economy, National Urban League's own reports, every report, New York Times did a study and they found that nearly 1/2 of all the black men between the ages of 16 and 64 are unemployed. All that can be changed, 1,699 years in order to close the homeownership gap. 85,000 deaths in 2005, according to a study done by Dr. David Satcher, because blacks, after they have crossed the hurdle of having access to health care, once they get inside the doctor's office, they get a different standard of treatment. So they die. We die. Infant mortality, the infant mortality rate today for blacks, the racial disparity is worse today than it was at the time of the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It will take 581 years without a public policy intervention to close the family wealth gap. And all of that, these are values. These are negative values on our community, but they're values nonetheless. And all of that is changeable if we have a different allocation. All of that is changeable. So when the DA in Gina, Louisiana said, with the stroke of a pen, I can ruin your lives to the high school students, he meant it. Because he had the authority to allocate his values against those young kids. And he did it. Now, Lee, that press conference that was organized by Ron Paul, we agreed on 4 points. More funding.
I've read the 4 points.
Yeah.
But when Ron Paul's people are saying around now using that, so even Cynthia McKinney agrees we have too big a national debt, so now we have to cut all social funding. That proves we have to.
No. I agree that we have too big a national debt, but my solution is that we nationalize the Federal Reserve. So we don't owe the Federal Reserve, which is a bunch of private bankers, we owe it to ourselves.
I know.
A vastly different and nationalize a banking system.
But that's not what Ron Paul wants to do.
No, of course not. Of course not. But we agree that deficit spending is a problem. David Walker, the former Comptroller General, who is charged with auditing the books for our government, says the United States government is $53 trillion in debt. And that if all of the debts and obligations are called in today, the country is bankrupt because we can't pay it. Now, he says that we've got another financial tsunami on the way when Japan and China And the other countries stop buying our bonds, they buy our debt. And then we're not even able to pay service on the debt. The largest expenditure is that of the budget is what we pay to those private bankers to service our debt.
Service the debt, like pay interest.
Pay
Pay the monthly payment.
the monthly payment. That's right, the monthly payment. We pay a yearly payment, and that's called debt service.
So, what is
I wanted to know, what kind of language should we use when we speak to our leaders within that system? Like, what kind of language would like be like even keywords or the jargon that we use, like to just get their attention and make it something that they value?
The language, dollars, and votes. We don't have public financing.
The other thing that works is embarrassment. Because if you don't have
Absolutely.
dollars and votes,
Yeah.
then you go to their office, have a sit-in, get it in the press.
That's right.
Because the press likes blood and guts, dog and pony show. So if you create a crisis in a politician's office, he'll buy you off to keep you from embarrassing him. Especially if it's an issue he should be supporting in the first place, but because dollars and votes, he wants white votes. That's one of Obama's problems. He wants white votes, so he won't say anything he's going to do for black folks. Even the black people he's been associated with that done anything for black folks, they're bringing them up and saying, hey, this is the kind of people that he's been around. That's because of dollars and votes. So what we have to do is create the embarrassment. And that's one thing Cynthia does with her campaign. She says, yeah, he's black, but what's he saying? This is what I'm saying. Now you compare what I'm saying to what he's saying, and when you go on his side, he's not saying anything because he don't want to say anything. He don't want to have to take a stand.
Right. Oh, and also, language is important. The Republicans did the contract with America, and they hired Frank Luntz, who polled on every word. And so the construction of the pieces of legislation, that's how you can get the No Child Left Behind Act. It's a result of polling, and it's all nice, but in the end, you know, it does exactly the opposite. The Take Our Streets Back Act. All these nice sounding pieces of legislation, and it's hard to be against them. And the Republicans are very good at using the right language. So language is important, and using the right language is also important.
Has that embarrassment tool wasn't that used to get you out of office too?
Oh, and yes, absolutely. I mean, I had, well, there's also embarrassment, and there's threats and intimidation. There's, I mean, you know, it can go the whole gamut. But yeah, I had a little ragtag group of white folks who would follow me everywhere I went, and particularly after my district was redistricted, when we were going through all of that, they would follow me everywhere I went. But sometimes they were pro-abortion, sometimes they were, pro-life. Sometimes they were the gun people. It's almost as if they rotated, and they took turns. But they were constantly, no matter where I went, they were there. And it was meant. But they did it, and it's effective. Now, you've got...
They were organized.
They were organized.
And that's the piece.
Right.
When you don't have money,
that's right.
You don't have a block, you must be organized and you must be united in your mind.
That's
and
right.
You have to be on the same page so that when you do go sit in or following people around, that you're going to be able to hang in there for as long as it takes, because it's not like, well, we're going to protest and we're going to ask permission from the police and we're going to get arrested for 15 minutes and then we're going to go back to school.
Right.
That's not how you're going to get.
But when it comes to organizing, my thing with organizing, how do we organize when a lot of our people believe the hype? When we believe, a lot of our people are teaching us the status quo. I mean, my parents teach within the educational system. So therefore, they understand what we're saying. And we have came so far, but at the same time, they're like, we're capitalists. We are taught capitalism. So since we are taught capitalism and we are taught, black people have came so far and this is where we are, how do we organize when so many of the masses believe the hype and are teaching our youth and marketing to our youth the hype? That's where it's hard to organize. It's hard to organize when the educational piece is not there. When we don't know, it's almost chaos.
Yeah, we have a difficult challenge.
But how do we get everybody here?
That kind of goes to like my question too on, so then you got, so because what you were talking about too, what we've been talking about is this is solidarity to get things done. But then like one of my questions too is this, there's a whole lot of people within our community who hold belief in the system, who hold belief in the popularity race, like, thinking, well, he's black, so that means automatically. So how do we get those people to stop believing and reach a point where they actually reach a point of knowledge, where they actually look at like these people don't follow the values? Yeah, it goes to the same question.
Because of this over here, you got a lot of people who are living the life. They're living the statistics. And when you're living those statistics, you're viewing life through a different prism. So we have to find people where they are. Yep. And we have to go where they are. But when we go, we're armed with information about their circumstances. And we talk to them about their circumstances.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's a combination. It's not just us going out there and agitating and giving them statistics and saying, well, look, your friends are in on this. How come you don't join that? That's a piece of it. But the other part of it is they need to get their asses kicked. And I'm not talking about by us, but I'm talking about the system itself. Because one of the best, there's a lot of people that I've met in my walk out here is folks that were believing the hype and wearing all the flashy stuff from BET and thought everything was great, and popping bottles and doing all this stuff. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. And they do all this stuff, and then they go to jail for the first time. And then they go through the criminal justice system. Then they really go to prison. Then they see people around them going to prison. And then they see somebody die in the street. And they need all these different things to happen to them before they get it. And then they come back to you and go, now they're ready to listen. It's sad but true.
But that's almost reactionary. We have to let stuff happen.
But aren't people getting, beat down every day though? Like in the hood, everywhere, the same thing already happening.
Sure, but you know what?
And they're self-medicated.
Yeah,
you
but
can be
sometimes
sheltered from
they have to
it
get
to some degree. You can choose to not know. And I happen to be one of those people. I just chose not to know, even in the education system. And it took me to go through a court situation to actually understand what white privilege was and to understand how there really was a disparity because information wasn't readily available to me and I didn't surround myself with people with this core type of information. And so until somebody presents it to you in a way that you're able to digest it, you can choose not to know.
First you had to take an answer with that pencil. Right?
But
And the court says,
the
I'm going to get you.
The other thing, if you start building a house, you'll be surprised. You don't even have to know how to build a house. Just start building a house. An older person is going to come and say, son, what are you doing? I'm building a house. Son, you don't do it like that. Let me show you. But if you don't take the initiative to do anything, it's not going to be done. It's like this African American Heritage Museum. All you do is say, we want a museum. You start fighting for it, and you stay focused on fighting for it. Because the average American, what he'll do, he gets excited for this a little bit, he runs into some problems, he goes over here and he does something else. Runs into a few problems, he goes over here and does something else. So here we are 50 years later, and we're in worse shape, and we have less institutions. We have more young black people killing each other. Because when I was growing up, that was unheard of. A black young person kill another young. Now it's just common. So what you have to do is figure out what you want and start doing it. If you want a museum, fight for it. If you want a house, start building one. And I guarantee you, if you want education,
start a school.
It's like White King, when he was little,
Teachers will.
I homeschooled him. Why? Because I wanted to get his mindset the first 3 years, because I was a teacher, and I already knew there was destruction in the public schools. So then, when he goes to school, they have school assignment. I said, White King, what school you want to go to? Then he would say, what school? I said, go there. Oh, you're not registered here. He said, well, call the police and tell them you're trying to put a black child in jail because he's trying to go to school. They couldn't go for that. So every year, whatever school he wanted to go to, that's the school he went to. So you have to outsmart. If you listen to them, they'll tell you what to do.
Right.
If you tell them this is what I'm going to do, call the police, they can't stand that embarrassment. See? So you got to strategically, first thing you got to do is you have to think for yourself. They can call it arrogance or stupidity or whatever. It's like a soldier. When I was in the Army, they said, well, go to Vietnam and kill these people. I said, no, I only fight people that fight me. And I never heard of no Vietnamese. I'm not fighting them because I'm not going to have that on my conscience that I killed somebody and they didn't do nothing to me. See? So first thing you have to do is go in your mind and analyze every thought you got, every value you got, and see if that's for me or did somebody put it in my head when I was young. A lot of people go to church. Why? They don't, because that's what they were programmed to go to church. And when they sit down and analyze scientifically what's being said, somebody died 2,000 years ago for something that you haven't done, for your sins. How is that logical? See, and once you get a person to be illogical about one thing, guess what? You can get them to be illogical about a lot of things. And one thing that slavery did in black folks in America is made them illogical. And a lot of the religion they practice is post-traumatic slavery syndrome. They got it out of slavery from the slave master, and it didn't do anything for him. So what's it going to do for you? The education, just like he said, the miseducation of the Negro. If you look at the public school, I used to review textbooks in the public schools, and they have a lot of lies in it. And you point out the lies, and how can the Europeans discover a land that's already got people? How can Christopher Columbus come and start killing Indians, kidnapping them, terrorizing them, but he's a hero, he's not listed as a terrorist in the public school system? See, another thing is consistency with words. See, you ask them what is a terrorist, who we say it is, but it does not apply to us. That was their response to terrorism, because they didn't want a level playing field for establishing who was a terrorist, because the Europeans are the biggest terrorists in the world. They terrorized the people in Australia. They terrorized the Jews in Germany. They terrorized all the Native Americans. Then they kidnapped Africans and terrorized them and populated South America and North America. But if you say you're a terrorist, they're like, oh, lock him up. Take him to the mental institution. Why? Because they can't deal with the truth. So when you establish in your own brain, it's like the program you had today at Seattle Community College. The museum wasn't mentioned. If you don't build an institution, you can talk politics from now till doomsday. Politics will not build a hospital. If you want a hospital, go get your black doctors and tell them we need our own. Why do you think our black medical care is so poor? Because our black doctors don't work together to create the health care for us. If we don't create health care for ourselves, who else is going to do it? See? And what did we go to school for? To get the information to build our community, not go work for this Microsoft and Boeing, all these white corporations. But that's what he's saying about the miseducation of the Negro, because if you send your guard dog to your enemy to be trained, yeah, when he comes back, he'll follow your command until what? The trainer comes on site. Yeah. And then your own guard dog will bite you if his trainer tells you to. That's what's happening to him.
A question for...
I think the film Resurrection is one great teaching tool, and there's one line in that film. That's what Afeni Shakur did, that film about her son, Tupac. And there's one line in there where Tupac is talking about his family traveling all over the country, and he hated the fact that they were so poor. But then as he traveled from city to city to city, he saw that it wasn't an individual flaw that was responsible for his family being in poverty. It was a systemic problem that occurred all over the country. That to me is the most powerful line in that film. But by utilizing Tupac's insights, I think it would be helpful for young people to understand that they need to look around them and employ creative strategies. He also talked about how he was forced to do the crazy stuff to get the record deal, but then he would slip in the conscious stuff so that he could communicate with young people. And that whole story is just, I think, one, coming not from an elder, but from a young person who paid the ultimate price because he was conscious and he was about to organize young people into that block that we were talking about to make sure that the allocation of values in this country was reflective of the needs of young people. That's what Tupac was about to do when he was murdered.
After years of taking ass whoopings.
I was just going to say the problems that you've written on the board, if you look at, where we have come to, and just a couple of those, infant mortality and family wealth, a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that we have given over responsibility for those things to our enemies. And, when you look at how our babies are born, I'm a teacher. I have students telling me, well, I'll be out, for a week this week because my baby's going to be born. It's like, well, how do you know? Well, because I had my ultrasound and I'm going to have a C-section. We get more C-sections than probably any other population. C-section is not a normal way to have a child. They make more money, they can schedule their vacations, you can stay in school, miss a week, come back. There are a lot of things that are happening to our children before they even get born, and that's because we've given over a lot of responsibility that used to be ours. We don't even feed our children from our bodies. We buy stuff that we don't know what it is, and we put stuff into our bodies that we don't read a label. If somebody came up to you and said, would you shoot this hypoglycosate benzo with red dye number 6 into your arm, you'd say no. But you drink it, and you eat it, and you get it out of the vending machine. So some of that has to do with the condition that we're in. And, it's just very sad that we have given over so much of our control. And I agree very strongly with the brother who said, if you want to have something, get busy, build it. If you don't like what's happening in school, start some study groups. Look at the models for organizations that have made change. Who's been successful in getting reparations? What did they do?
That's right.
And how did they do it? Reparations is we're arguing about what it's supposed to be. Like, they ain't gonna give us this, it's like, where they gonna get it from, how they gonna, if I'm a woman, I'm being abused, and I have documentation that I've been abused over time, and the reason, and this is the person who abused me, and this is how I'm suffering because because I've been abused, I can't get a job, I can't, I'm nervous, I'm upset, I'm afraid because this is the result of being abused. Reparations. Was there slavery? Did anything happen to the slaves? Did it affect them? Is there any relationship between that? Yes, Judge, Your Honor, let us hear my case that I've been abused. Then you decide, let the court decide what is fair. And get a good lawyer.
2 questions, Judge. One, could you speak to what do you think about this group and the people that you've touched being in Seattle in relation to you're traveling over the campaign, and then November 5th.
You guys are so advanced. I mean, I didn't know that. First of all, people think that people idealize Seattle. Seattle doesn't have any problems. Well, yeah, so I'm surprised, but that you have this kind of leadership inside the community. It's a very short step from recognizing that you have a problem, organizing to resolve those problems, and then implementing those strategies that you organize around to solve those problems. And you guys have done 2 of them. So now it's just a matter of implementing your strategies so that you can solve your problems. And now that's, of course, every one of them is difficult because a lot of people don't see the problems that they have. Those folk who are struggling to own a home, this one is home ownership, and they are over here with the corporate press, not necessarily in, politics of popularity and horse race, but they're looking at the soap operas, they're looking at game shows. BET. Turn that darn thing off. That's right, they're looking at BET.
There's no pollution.
That's right.
Get their minds polluted.
That's right. And so then if this is what you talk about, this is what you look at, this is what you listen to, then you'll never get around to dealing with this. And it's all by design.
Distraction.
I have a question.
That's right.
After all the stuff you've been through as far as being dogged over by political parties and having the vote turned against you and so on and so forth, how do you still have your faith in the election system?
Because they work so hard to skew it and to steal elections. And if, like, for example, when they kicked me out of Congress the first time, the Green Party came to me at that point, that was 2004, and they asked me to run. And I had a choice to make, whether I was going to run for re-election or I was going to run for on the national ticket for the Green Party. And I said, my calculation was, if they work so hard to get me out of Congress, there must be value in that seat. I need to go back and resume my incumbency in that seat. So that's what I did. Then they kicked me out again. When they work hard to install those voting machines so that they flip the vote, they incorrectly tally the vote so that the machines can be hacked into, that's because the vote is important still. And so they haven't won, the big they haven't won yet because they don't control your minds. And now I felt that I was doing the work in the Congress of the so-called left. But the left never really supported me. I didn't even know that there was something called the black left. I only found that out after I had gotten kicked out and I was working on the Reconstruction Movement, Reconstruction Party project, and folks around the table were talking about the black left. But here I was in Congress doing everything that the black left believes in. And nobody ever reached out to me. I didn't know they existed. So I began to think about, I was thinking about a lot of things. You've got people in academia who are paid to think. They're paid to come up with solutions. You've got people in office who are paid to provide solutions. How come they don't talk to each other? And we've got this level of disconnect in our community that we're not utilizing the levers of power that we do have. If you talk about the level of analysis on the individual that's there, the local, state, and then you've got outside of government structures, non-governmental structures, and we're not talking to each other. So a recognition of where the how can I put it? The pits that we've fallen into that make it difficult for us to climb out. Recognition of the fact that we've got these pits that make it difficult for us to achieve our overall mission and objective allows me to think that if we eliminate the division, we increase the communication, we increase the cooperation, that we can solve our problems. Now, if after having done that, we still can't do it, then I'll reach a different conclusion. But right now, we haven't even touched the power that we possess.
I've got a question. So I heard like over this weekend, they're saying that power respects power.
Yes.
And so then what I'm looking at though is like, you know, we're talking about, you know, within our community, our solidarity. And then we're also talking about too, like, we're just talking about the government in general and getting positions out, you know, getting in positions, making sure that we make the people in those positions do what we need to do. But at the same time, would you not say that maybe it's time for us to form our own government and really focus on the power within our communities and push that forward?
Oh, I think we definitely need to push the power of our community. But I disagree that as long as we have the allocation of values that is oppressive to our community, and we have the power to become the authoritative element, a part of that authoritative element or the authoritative element, then we need to do that too.
Do you have any concrete examples of that? Where that, because that's what people have been saying. Are there any concrete examples?
That Clayton County in Georgia, where overnight in one election, 50 people were sworn in January.
How about us here in Seattle, where we're only 3, you know, Washington with 3%, King County with 8%, Seattle we might be, I think King County with 6%, Seattle with 8%.
Then I think Marcella's point becomes the operative point. There's one thing that, well, first of all, there's the black community, the black young community. There's perhaps some point of agreement with the white young community. There would certainly be a point of agreement with other young communities of color. And so perhaps you might want to have a committee of these people, because that everybody writes off that 16 to 24 age group. When you get into like your 25 to 32 or so, then you've got people who are mothers and their parents, and they have children, so they have a different set of values, and then they put roots down in the community a little bit more, so they become a little more active in the process. But certainly those young people, that's where I would go. And then, you know, the voter file is a tool, and it will tell you a lot. The census businesses use the census data in order to decide on what kinds of businesses to locate where. And that gives you a lot of information in terms of education, immigration status, family size. The census information is quite extensive. So if you look at that, then you know you can find some point of commonality and use that. But I think, you know, I think Seattle is a young town.
But like, you know, when you use those examples, like you were talking about in Atlanta, right? You know, they sworn in those black people, but at the same time, too, the black people, working class, we're still at the same time by the end of those 30 years in the same position. And it seems like to swear the people into those authoritative positions in the government still has its own functions on how it's going to work. So still their values are going to be compromised.
Well, now, I mean, it's not sufficient for us to just, I mean, these people, we're not operating in a vacuum. For every action, there's a reaction.
Right.
And so, if we organize ourselves, I guarantee you that the other folk will organize it too. But I can tell you one thing for sure with great certainty. Every day, somebody wakes up and their goal is to put a black elected official in prison. Every day. We're engaged in a war and y'all just don't know it. Every day. And that's how they get people who are on our side of the chessboard, but they don't operate for us. Yeah.
Former Howard or, Spelman. But if you let somebody else come in and get on your board and say, listen, we'll give you some money, and they get on your board and say, hey, that black studies, we don't want that black studies. We want white studies. We want all these black kids with white studies in their head. We want them all to have a white religion. We want them to worship a white Jesus. You know what happens? What you see is what you got. Nothing. And in this city, Cynthia, in particular, it's not like Atlanta where they got black bourgeois that want something, have something, In this city, we don't have a bourgeois that wants anything. And that's why they don't have not one black institution in this city other than churches. All that it's set up to do is a psychological therapy for the hell you catch from white people the 6 days a week. Sunday you can go holler and scream and and sing and dance like at the nightclub, the entertainment, and then you feel better, you released it, and then you go and catch hell another 6 days. And a good example of that, Cynthia, is the reason why we decided to form this African American Heritage Mutant Culture Center, so we would have one institution, same way with a Moja Fest. So we'd have one institution where everybody can come together. So we don't have this clique and who's in charge, It's for everybody, Cynthia. The holy hell coming from, first of all, the festival, trying to get all the churches to come together Sunday. And one time out of the year, practice their Christianity. All you Christians come together and have a worship. Oh no, this big church don't want to deal with that big church, and this medium-sized churches and small. And that's why I was saying, first thing each individual needs to do is clear their mind of this, what they call it, static, and then decide what you want and what institutions you want. Then you fight to create those. But as long as you sit back and complain and whine, because one of the things is we have a professional whine cry elite. The NAACP, the Urban League, 80 years, what institution have they created? What institution have they said they wanted? None. All they want to do is what? Master boss, please treat me a little better.
And let me in your institute.
Yeah. So that's why you as young people got to get in your mind, what do you want as a black person? If you want a white education, go to university and get a white education. If you want a Negro education, go to Spelman and get a Negro education. But if you want a black, quote, African education centered on Afrocentric, on what you need to develop your children and your community, then if you don't see it, it's like Marcus Garvey said. I looked around, where are the black people of higher affairs and government? He said, I didn't see any. So I set about to do what? Create them. And that's why they locked him up and drove him out of the country. But he created the independence of Africa, because even the Africans weren't talking about running Africa. They were talking about being treated better in the colonial system. And if you look at what black people in America are asking for now, i.e. integration, let me be treated better in the colonial system. They're not going to Native Americans and saying, listen, how are we going to liberate ourselves in our land so we can go home? They're saying, oh, I want to go to University of Washington. I want to do this. I want to do that. Microsoft is discriminating against me. They won't hire. No, why don't you create your own Microsoft? You see the way the East Indians do? They come and work with Microsoft until they can see a place where there's a gap. Then they jump out of Microsoft, set up a business, and fill that gap and get to be what? Multi-millionaire business. Doing what? Something Microsoft wasn't doing. See, so the whole thing is what you think, what you create. It's just like hip-hop. Black young people created hip-hop out of clear blue sky. What is it now? A multi-billion-dollar industry. With all the negative, the positive, whatever it is, it's generating billions of dollars of employment for young black folks. From where? They just created it. So if you want something, create it. Stop waiting for somebody else to build it for you. Just find out you want it, find out the other people, convince them to want it, and then fight for it. It's simple. The lion eats what he figures he wants to eat. You're not going to eat no tiger.
I got one more question for you, Cynthia. Do you think capitalism is the best system for black people in America?
No, it wasn't the best system in Africa, was it? No, no. Let me see, what was I going to say?
Well, I don't believe it. I just wanted to know how, I mean, as a future president and somebody I'm endorsing, I wanted to know how you felt about that.
No, I think my observations are right along with yours.
Just a predator. Just eats the wheat, and that's it. And then it turns on itself. It starts eating them. That's what's going on in the banking institution now. No bank wants to borrow from another bank because they're all crooks. If I get something, I'm not going to lend you anything. You're as crooked as I am. You ain't trying to pay me back. You got all this bad paper too. That's why the whole economy's collapsed, and all the crooks are saying, hey, I ain't dealing with you no more. You as big a crook as I am.
So one of the most important things too is that we come together like regularly, because they come together like every day, in multiple places, and get their pinky and the brain on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, at least a couple places that we get together regularly is Wade's on Wednesday. It's a different environment. It's spoken word, poetry singers. But also you have to create another culture, another environment, just like artists have to be around artists and they grow. So we're at Wade's on Wednesdays from like 6 to 8 is like just a mixer, for people to come and just hang out for a minute. It's 8 to 10 is the actual show. So if you know Artist Center, then Sundays we're at the Mojo Center working on that. So it's like it has to be an everyday, like it has to be a way of life. Like freedom has to be your way of life. It can't be a part-time, like, okay, let's go be free with Cynthia for, 2 hours, or let's go be free with Dead Prez for 3 hours, you know what I'm saying? It gotta be your way of life, because capitalism, for those people that are capitalists they're that 100% of the time. So if you're what if you're not 100% dedicated to what you are, then there's gonna be a loss.
Yeah, I was been turning over ways to kind of strategize the rescue of the financial institutions when they say we didn't have $56 million to put into healthcare for preventative measures, but then they have they're saving wooden arrows and plants and stuff like that. How can we hold them accountable on the back end of this money by saying, okay, you said that this wasn't available, but all of a sudden it became available, and so we're looking for ways to prevent stuff.
I don't know what your Washington State delegation did, but they don't deserve your vote. Anybody who voted for that bailout, they don't deserve your vote.
I think Cantwell went against that one.
Yeah, she went against it.
Cantwell, yeah. She was the only one that
Marie went
with it.
Is there a way that we can spin it positively? Because they're doing chunks for certain things. It's not
There's no way you can spend $700 billion to the predators positively.
Well, if it's not all going to the financial institutions, from what I understand, they're rationing it out slowly and differently. And so, how can we say,
they're not going to give it to the 501c3 organization?
How much is going to you?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking, how can we get that to happen? Now that it's already, now that they're saying they have this money on the table, what can we do?
It's not on the table for you.
That's the question that the
How much do you want?
Right.
when people get all bent out of shape about this, you know, the economy is falling. You know, my husband and I, we talked about like, actually, it might be a good thing for
I know for a fact
us.
it's a good thing.
For us, because we don't have any money anyway,
Exactly.
right? And what it requires us to do is get together with our neighbors and do a community garden, maybe. Maybe we need to do some co-housing. Maybe we need to do some child care in our, maybe it will force us to do some of the things that we. Yeah. I mean, they borrowed it from the Fed.
Yeah.
So they got to pay that back plus interest.
Print it up.
Yeah, it's not real anyway.
It's not, yeah.
Right.
And I think the question is, if you're a capitalist, then that's one thing. And if you're not, that's another thing. And you need to know who you are.
And some people say that we need to be better capitalists in this capitalist society.
First thing, you better know what you want.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want some of that money, go get some, go fight for it.
Well, one thing
You have them bankers and all them people, you better believe, they fighting for get every nickel and dime they can out of that. But if you sit back and ask what am I gonna get out of it, you're not gonna get anything. Because whatever you want in life, you have to go fight for it.
That's part of my question.
So you're asking how to go fight for it?
Yes.
Well, honestly, it ain't intended for you. So you ain't gonna get none to start with. I would say, how do you fight for your piece of the pie, which is your piece of the budget? And that's what this whole exercise was about, the definition of politics. I mean, you know, you're looking at $700 billion there, and then the automotive industry wants a little, they want more, and what did Tupac write? There's money for war, but you can't feed the poor.
Something else to consider too. Like with this bailout and all, and the economy collapsing, don't worry, celebrate. Because every place where the economy is totally collapsed, one of two things will happen. Either A, the people who caused the problem start redistributing the wealth in order to get people to buy more stuff so they can prop it up again and start the whole process over again. That's one thing they will do. The other thing they will do, as they did in Russia, China, Vietnam, and Cuba, when their economies collapsed because the right-wingers there fucked off the money and ran their system into the ground, people went over and started seizing the factories, the farms, the banks, and all that, and started running it in a way where it was, you know, the wealth was distributed to the poorest of the poor and the people who actually work. You know, because that's